On this episode, we learn about the transportation initiatives of the Congress for the New Urbanism. Then, we drop in on the ProWalk, ProBike, ProPlace conference in Long Beach. We meet the founder of Los Angeles Walks. Finally, we look at a new fire hydrant that blocks a sidewalk in Bethesda, Maryland. Stay tuned.
We're in Long Beach, California, talking with Rick Hall with HPE. What is HPE?
It's Hall Planning and Engineering. We bridge the gap between the hard planning and the growing engineering.
A couple days ago, the Congress for the New Urbanism had a subgroup meeting here. Who was meeting here? What were they doing?
Okay. It was the Transportation Initiative for C&U, for the Congress for the New Urbanism. And that's a group of dedicated transportation-oriented professionals, architects, engineers, attorneys, all a mixed group of professionals. And it's a time where we come together and focus on the transportation aspects specifically that relate to the broader issue of the Congress for placemaking and urban design.
Okay, which I guess is maybe where we should have started. Yeah, what is CNU? What's it all about?
Well, it's the organization that, to my observation, is doing more for creating livable, walkable, traditional style places than any other organization in the United States today. It was started 30 years ago, and it's still going very, very strong.
So what were people trying to develop at this meeting? You were all working hard in windowless meeting rooms all day.
Right.
What were you trying to accomplish?
Well, we identified about 6 different issues that were germane to the transportation part of the CNU. For example, transit ways and transit activity that relates to the building of the community. And then there was another group for bicycle emphasis, and they were doing bicycle networks and design styles for treating bicycle mobility through the city. Another group was dealing with modeling. There's a lot of computer modeling to simulate future travel in metropolitan areas, and that's done throughout the United States. And we're not sure that the way that modeling is done is really beneficial or useful to the CNU professionals. Another group, the one that I headed, was dealing with the regional implementation of these ideas, and also the term called functional classification of streets and highways. And that's a framework within which the Federal Highway Administration and the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, the AASHTO, that create what is called the Green Book. It's a framework that they use to build everything out, and it's basically automobile oriented today. They only have some slight considerations of pedestrians and transit and bicycles. So we're trying to flip that for certain areas and get areas identified, like immediately down in this area of Long Beach, where you would say, that's a highly walkable area, so the design standards should be different. So what are these work groups achieved in the past, and what's going to be coming out next? Okay. In the past, we've been successful in creating several documents. One is a joint project with ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers in Washington, and about 12 of us from CNU and 12 of them from ITE got together, had 3 or 4 working sessions, and created a good living document that describes how the walkability can be built into major streets in the United States. And so that was our first foray into the detail engineering analysis and engaging them in their design parameters for greater walkability. And then there was another document that was a spin-off from that dealt with networks on a broader scale. And that's an internally published document that CNU now has that talks about networks. So each of these initiatives came out of the kind of brainstorming and work group activity that the CNU members had come together to perform in the past. So we expect more of that to happen with this most recent summit that we held on Sunday and Monday.
And you come out with these studies or manuals or whatever. They make their way out into the profession.
Right.
How might our cities be different as a result of what you folks are doing?
Already they're different. There have been half a dozen to a dozen examples of people using this ITE C&U walkable thoroughfare design manual. And our folks are able to come into a meeting, an interagency meeting, and put that on the table and say, we'd like to do some of the lane widths and the speeds that are in this document. And the other people will pick it up and say, okay, this is an official document. So it begins to allow us to have more walkable and more pedestrian and transit friendly places without having to go through quite as much argument and debate as we have in the past.
We're in Long Beach, California, talking with Charlie Gandy, who was head of the host committee for ProWalk, ProBike. What is ProWalk, ProBike, and what the host committee do?
It's an event. It's a professional development conference that's been going on for some 20 years now in cities, mostly on the east and the west coasts, that bring together advocates for bicycling and walking, professionals related to that field, and electeds and public officials that are interested in these issues.
And as chair of the host committee,
Yep.
What kind of work were you doing?
Raising money, competing with other cities to get the conference, then developing a host committee that was activists in the community that would be doing different things. And so we put together the local end of this thing and set up a bunch of mobility tours and set up these parties and activities locally. And the conference guys did all the attendance and the money and the national promotional campaign to get 850 people from around the United States to Long Beach but it's interesting to note that this is now known as ProWalk, ProBike, ProPlace for two reasons. One is the Project for Public Spaces is the owner of this conference now, and two, ProPlace makes sense in the context of walking and bicycling. And so it's a realization from the community that all of this is about context. All of this is about creating a dynamic place that is good for walking, bicycling, living. And so the place matters in our conversation about bicycling and walking.
Now, what makes Long Beach a good place to talk about bicycling and walking?
Because we've got fresh political leadership that understands the economic value of bicycling and walking. That's the bottom line. They have seen where bicycle facilities, networks, and systems create more people riding bikes, but from a more important point of view, as an economic development, interest in economic development, people are looking at that. Companies are attracted to that. Their employees are attracted to that. We've had 24 new businesses open in Long Beach in the last 2 years that are bike related. And that ranges from bike shops to touring companies to pedicabs to a company that makes apparel and for bicycling, panniers and so forth. They moved 10 employees from Los Angeles to Long Beach because their employees wanted to carry on car light or car-free lifestyles. And their office and showroom is on a street with a bike lane. That is economic development in 2012, Southern California.
So the companies aren't looking for a freeway exit, they're looking for a walkable, bikeable street.
Good point. Here's what we're doing. We've gotten out of the business of economic hunting. We're no longer going out trying to find that company that's interested in the off-ramp and then lowering. We can't compete because this is a high-quality place to live. but we can compete in the world of economic gardening, and that is essentially what we're doing here. We're recognizing that this sector, that is bicycling, is an important opportunity for us to grow. And so by embracing bicycling, not only are we getting more people out on bikes, but we're getting more companies selling bikes and more sales tax revenue from bikes, and using bicycling as a differentiator between Orange County and Los Angeles, and attracting 20 and 30-year-olds that they are hungry for. That is a differentiator. That is a economic development strategy called economic gardening. And we can go into that if you'd like, but Google it, because that is going to be it's a differentiator. It's a different strategy in economic development. It's looking at what you're good at, what's already there, and saying, how can we move that company from 5 engineers to 15, or from 15 to 50? That's economic development, economic gardening style.
And you say political leadership has been necessary for the transformation to make it pedestrian bicycle friendly. What does political leadership look like to make that transformation?
Political leadership in Southern California looks like Suja Lowenthal and Robert Garcia. Suja is a person that has been around the country, that has recognized as an urban planner herself the importance of creating a livable place, a place that's attractive, a place like this that we can hang out at on a cool summer evening and enjoy the beautiful place that we live. So Suja knows that. Robert Garcia has gone to Seville and seen how bicycling can be a transformational experience for an entire community, and has come back and said, that will work in my primarily Hispanic district. And so, that's what we have going here, are new council members that are in their 30s and 40s that see how this is a powerful narrative for the city of Long Beach. The narrative of active living, of embracing bicycling, is differentiating us from Orange County and Los Angeles, and is making us very attractive to 20 and 30-year-olds.
So are you seeing more people walking, more people bicycling as a result of what's been going on?
Our numbers have always, when we put in a new facility, they double or triple almost overnight. It's routine for us to put bike lanes in now because we've put in this other bling. We've put in separated bikeways, we've put in bike boulevards. Bread and butter bike lanes are pretty routine. And the neighborhoods are looking at this and they're saying, how about us? And the good news is we've raised $22 million around this campaign from the county and state and federal agencies, and we've only spent about a quarter of that. We still got roughly $15 million to put into another 15 miles of bike boulevards in the other neighborhoods now that like this stuff. So we have real momentum going here and a real embracing of bicycling.
We're talking with Deborah Murphy, who's an urban planner. What sort of urban planning do you do?
I have a firm, Deborah Murphy Urban Design Plus Planning, and I work on pedestrian and bike planning, grant writing. We design projects along with doing the grants and advocate for better streets.
Part of your advocacy, you're a founder of Los Angeles Walks.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, I started this pedestrian advocacy organization about 15 years ago in 97, 98. At the same time, a lot of other pedestrian advocacy groups were starting up around the country, kind of trying to base it upon other organizations like the Willamette Pedestrian Coalition, and others got engaged in going to a number of conferences like getting involved with America Walks and ProBike. Started to be ProWalk, ProBike in 2000, was engaged in all of that. And the organization started off bringing people together from all around the city of Los Angeles and other neighboring cities to talk about pedestrian safety issues, design, engineering, enforcement, education, kind of all the 5 E's. And we had a good momentum going, but because of the spread out nature of Los Angeles, it was challenging to continue to get people together. As well, we decided not to be a membership organization because, as we've all been talking about, it's hard for pedestrians to kind of self-identify themselves. Unlike a cyclist, if you're a cyclist, you're like out there doing it, but we're all pedestrians, so it was hard to get people to get engaged in actually doing things. They could come up with good ideas, and we came up with a whole mission statement, but it turned out that everybody said, oh, Deborah, you could do that. Deborah, you could do that. It's like, well, this isn't a one-woman show. I needed a support team. Plus, I was chair of the City of Los Angeles Pedestrian Advisory Committee, so my focus was as a volunteer to really focus on the City of Los Angeles and to keep that momentum going and give feedback to the Los Angeles Department of Transportation and other city departments about pedestrian engineering and design, as well as enforcement, education, and the rest of it. Then a number of years went by, and as I started my own firm, I was actually working on all that design effort, and was harder to just be this single advocate. And great to know that in Los Angeles we have a fabulous bicycle coalition, the LA County Bike Coalition. A number of really dynamic people there, like Alexis Lance, who was our policy director, came forward and said she wanted to get more involved in pedestrian advocacy, as well Jessica Meany with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. Here as a Los Angeles and California representative, was able to offer their partnership with me, and that we could use LA County Bike Coalition as our umbrella 501c3, our nonprofit status. So that was a really big step, so we could do fundraisers and we could get a little money together, so eventually we could hire a staff person. So we did that last November. A woman who was an intern at UCLA in the planning school, who had been an attorney, offered her time on the steering committee, and she wrote our agreement with LACBC. As well, volunteered to do some research for her client project at UCLA to look at pedestrian safety around transit. So we called it Safe Routes to Transit. So she did a lot of homework about the most dangerous near transit stop locations for pedestrian fatalities and injuries. So we got a lot of momentum going starting last November. A number of other people joined our steering committee. Alyssa Walker, who is a writer and a really great journalist and very respected in the design community and planning, and she's a car-free person and just a very eloquent speaker. So she was able to get us a lot of press. So that was a huge step. So when we did a fundraiser in April, she got us 15 articles published across the United States, everything from Atlantic cities to local publications like Curb LA and other planning types of and architecture publications. So we got a couple hundred people to come to our fundraiser. We raised over $4,000. A really big step for us. We've been engaged in doing some community-related events. We had our first kind of broad community meeting, but more focused on the Echo Park, Silver Lake neighborhoods in just outside of downtown Los Angeles, where we brought together people to talk about our campaign we're calling SAFE. So safe, accessible, fun, and equitable is our kind of pedestrian campaign. So we had broke into groups and talked about those issues and identified programs that we wanted to get engaged in. So the Fun Committee is getting involved in our Ciclavia, which is our biannual, is that the right term you use? When it's twice a year? Yes, I know. People use it different ways. Twice a year we have a Ciclavia, and because of the name, even though Ciclavia is supposed to be a big street party, it's been very focused in many people's minds on being a cycling event, and some people treat it like as a race, or I got to go from the beginning to the end, instead of thinking about it as it being a series of places and events along this particular route where the streets are closed off based on the Ciclovia from Bogota, Colombia. So we're on a campaign to get people to slow down, look around, and meet someone. That's sort of my little slogan. So that we're going to have pedestrian related events along Figueroa Street, which is a new part of the route. The general route in the past has gone from East Hollywood to Boyle Heights, about a 7-mile route. They're now shortening the route on the west end, so it'll go from MacArthur Park to Boyle Heights and have a route that'll go down Figueroa Street to Exposition Park. So we're going to do a series of event-related things along Figueroa Street. So that'll be a big thing, and create some fun things. It's not just all serious campaigning for safer streets, but it's to have fun out there at the same time. And the other thing we did in the Silver Lake neighborhood, where there have been a number of pedestrian fatalities, sad to say, as well as some crashes, we had a community meeting where we had a working session with community members from the neighborhood council and other folks to identify problem streets and intersections and crossings, and we're going to be following up to look at a series of streets in that neighborhood in Los Angeles to then follow up and go toward the city council and the city departments to look for funding and strategies for how to solve some of those issues. So that we've really been able to come around. We have a great new identity that's been created for Los Angeles Walks by one of our steering committee members, Colleen Corcoran. Very bold and dynamic kind of graphic as well. She's the one who did all the stuff for Ciclavia, so she's well respected, and she serves on that board, so it's a nice crossover for us as well. As I mentioned, that Jessica is with Safe Routes to School National Partnership. Alexis was with the Bike Coalition. Now she's with LA County Department of Public Health. So now we have this great connection with public health, and we're looking to expand our steering committee. We don't have a board at this time. We have just our steering committee because we don't need a board at this moment, having LACBC as our nonprofit. We will work into that in the future as we need to, and not really doing memberships, but we have a mailing list, and obviously through events we want to do our fundraising, and then we want to go after some grant funding both locally and nationally to help support us. California Walks has been a good partner with us. We're very lucky in California to have a statewide organization that tries to support all the local walking advocacy groups. So we did in May a conference called Peds Count, which was all about how we really need to get our data together to kind of prove how many people are out there walking and what are the safety issues that are related to our development here in Los Angeles. And we're going to even have a little meeting here today to talk about strategy. So Wendy Ellison and her staff have been really great supporters from California Walks.
And are you doing just the city of Los Angeles, or what's happening with the surrounding areas?
We're trying to focus on that because that's our biggest problem. Other cities like Santa Monica have really made an effort. They have a pedestrian safety plan. Long Beach has been doing good things, so we're just trying to focus on Los Angeles. But I think as other volunteers come along who want to do something, let's say in a Santa Monica or something, and they want to run with something, we could use the mantle of Los Angeles Walks as a support mechanism for them. But for us to divide the time we currently have into spreading out that far as it is. Los Angeles is 465 square miles and has almost 4 million people. That's enough of a nut to crack. So we would support others who want to run with a mantle in a different city, but we are definitely focused on the city of Los Angeles.
And people think of LA, they think of all the the big freeways that come through town and so on, and maybe not so much the the smaller streets. How much of the problem is working with the city itself on the neighborhood streets and the smaller streets, and how much with the Caltrans, the state agencies on those big highways that cut through town?
It's really about the streets, pretty much. I mean, where our major streets do intersect with freeway on and off ramps, that is definitely an issue. Caltrans is trying to do actually a better job. I mean, they have ped and bike coordinators. Dale Benson, who is the Caltrans District 7 ped and bike coordinator, is a strong supporter. He also happens to serve on the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. So that neighborhood that we just talked about where we did our community design charrette, he was engaged in that as well. So I think they're making a better effort, and they're actually trying to get the city to do a better job. They provide funding for our Safe Routes to School program, the alternate year that the feds don't have Safe Routes to School program funding. So Dale is involved in that along with other staff. And they try to review any of the Caltrans designated streets and making sure that they meet ped and bike standards. The city of Los Angeles is growing and changing and trying to do a better job. The bike coordinator, Michelle Mowry, has now been there for 17 years. And after 15 years of promoting this on my part, along with lots of others, we finally now have a pedestrian coordinator in the city of Los Angeles. A person appointed is Margot Ocañas, who had been working for the LA County Department of Public Health. So she started 2 weeks ago, and there's an assistant coordinator, Valerie Watson, who has been an urban designer and planner with the Melendrez design firm, actually where I used to work. And she started this week, and she's here to, both of them are here at the ProWalk ProBike conference. And so it's a new day for pedestrian issues in Los Angeles. Their focus in the first couple of years is to work on a strategic plan for safe routes to school. The city of Los Angeles has not done a very good job in their applications to both Caltrans and to the feds for safe routes to school funding. Their programs and the design ideas have not been very broad or encompassing, and haven't had strong applications that have, worked with the local school or with the parents and the kids in the neighborhoods, or identifying the most problem schools. So this will be a very data-driven strategic plan that will look at the 100 most schools with the most need, meaning where are the most crashes, where are the most kids walking to school, where do we have support from the local community and the local school principal. So that'll be the focus of their work, but they'll also be a liaison with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which I chair, and dealing with other broader issues and relationships with the department, the Public Works Department and the Planning Department. We're doing a new mobility element in Los Angeles, as well as with our police department, which is trying to handle these issues in a better way. They've been getting a better relationship with the bicycle advocacy community, and hopefully they'll do the same with pedestrian. We have a lot of hit and runs in Los Angeles, both with cyclists and with pedestrians.
We're on Bradley Boulevard in Bethesda, Maryland, where a fire hydrant's been blocking the sidewalk for over 50 years. However, the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, the WSSC, is undergoing major renovations in this area, replacing all the ancient water mains. They're also replacing all the old fire hydrants. Unfortunately, they positioned the new fire hydrant the same distance from the curb as the old one. It will still be blocking the sidewalk. When you talk to the WSSC, they tell you it meets their standards. Now, their standard is providing just the bare minimum required under the Americans with Disabilities Act to get a wheelchair by. That's like saying you passed the course because you got a D. They could have strived for an A by putting the fire hydrant behind the edge of the sidewalk and kept the entire width of the sidewalk clear. Could they have done that? Well, the power company has put all the utility poles behind the edge of the sidewalk here. If the power company could have done it, we think the WSSC could have figured out a way to do it too.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.